What's up everyone and welcome back to Reload Reacts. My name is Trey and today we are going to look through r/NuclearRevenge, the subreddit for those who take their revenge to the most extreme of lengths. This first post is by a deleted user. I knocked the divisional manager off his pedestal. I worked for a large global IT company. In my team, we are part of a larger extended team and even a larger still divisional team. The manager of this division is called Raj. He's based in the States and is what many would call the poster boy definition of a corporate suck-up. According to him, he is in constant video chats with the CEO and has a lot of face-to-face interaction with him. He also appears on much of our division's promotional emails and photographic material, so he's a company-wide recognized person. As for me, I am a trench-working techie from Scotland. My direct manager is always happy with my performance, and I am somewhat known in our extended team, but not so much in the divisional team. Until this event, which was a while before the COVID outbreak, although I was aware of Raj and his reputation, I had never worked with him directly. I got invited to a company-wide collaboration event in America, which we usually use for technical training and innovation discussion. When we got there, and there were some initial social events and meet and greets, Raj was amongst the group and his general demeanour seemed appropriate for the reputation which followed him. We went into the first day bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I was assigned to a group of 10 people to work on a problem with some coding. All was going well until we came to do some group presentations. For our group, a young woman named Natalie was speaking for all our results. It all seemed to go okay, but after the session was over, Raj asked to see Natalie out in the hall. From inside the room, we could hear Raj literally screaming at her. Many offensive slurs were used, and we could hear banging on the wall as well. Natalie returned to the room a sobbing mess, much to the shock of everyone. Raj returned as if nothing had happened. The pattern continued over the course of the week. Raj would single out people for one-on-one performance critiques. He would go into detail about how work was substandard and how they needed to improve, all while taking group photos for corporate comms for the higher-ups, orchestrating shots to make us all look like one big happy family. I spoke to some of my own team back home about this in my downtime, and it does turn out that this has always been rumoured behaviour for him. Just no one ever knew someone who had experienced this before. I don't know what the job culture is like for this role in a place like America, but here, we have dignity at work regulations. Performance criticism is fine, but not when you are engaging in ritualistic humiliation of your employees. I knew exactly what I was going to do. For the next few days, I made sure that I was delivering more presentations than anyone else, and really making an effort to attract attention. As hoped, he asked me for a chat and pulled me into the hall. He didn't wait for the door to close before starting his rant. Experiencing it firsthand was interesting. He claimed I had no idea what I was talking about, even though it had likely been about 20 years since he did any technical work himself. He was vile, shouting and spitting in my face. I also learnt what the banging noises were. He would punch doors and slam his hands on the wall near me, as if to try and intimidate me. I was prepared mentally though, and just smiled and nodded during the entire rant. He looked angry that I was reacting this way, and by the end of it, I thought he was legitimately going to burst a blood vessel. When he finished, I asked him if he was done. He told me to get out of his sight, and that's when I did it. I gave him a Glasgow kiss. For those unfamiliar, it is a headbutt, and it is not the first headbutt I've delivered in my life, having been brought up near Glasgow. He collapsed to the floor in shock, holding his nose, which didn't bleed unfortunately. Looking up at me, I leaned down, and in my most Glaswegian accent I whispered to him, "If you ever disrespect me or my colleagues again, I'll kick the utter F out of you next time, you see." I went back into the room, while he did not. Inevitably, I got the HR call. Raj was in the room as well, and I could see that he had 2 black eyes as a result of the headbutt. I was asked to explain myself and I told the truth, mostly. I explained about his abusive behaviour, but focused specifically on the hand slamming and how it had been intimidating me. It hadn't really, but I massively played up on the aspect of this encounter. I described the headbutt as a reaction when he slammed the wall right next to my head with his hands. I wasn't sure what story he had told him, but I was sent away after this. I ultimately ended up with a disciplinary on my record, but no further consequences. Other team members were interviewed over the next few days, and once the pattern of abuse was established, Raj was terminated from the company. The most satisfying part of this was the day after, when everyone on the course went out for dinner. Natalie insisted that he stand next to her for the division group photograph, black eyes and all. I have to think that photograph contributed to his downfall in some way. The top comment reads, "Here I was thinking you'd have recorded his outburst. But the headbutt and putting him in his place is much better." This next post is by ZZTRI or ZZTRI for you Americans. "You pay for it one way or another. Greetings. Normally, this was not even a subreddit I followed, but a certain YouTuber entertained me a lot by reading a few select posts from this one. Aw, thank you. Just kidding. Our story is from years ago. I used to work for some kind of full-stack agency as a coder, doing websites, desktop applications and integrations for customers. Life was good and it got even better. After managing to provide an important customer with 5-star hotels all around my country with a great website with integration to their ERP and also mobile solutions which didn't exist then in my country, a headhunter had found me. He offered nearly triple the salary I was getting, and it was impossible to say no to that. I informed my employer, gave him a generous notice of a month so I could wrap up the last projects. Let me warn you that I was a very young and incredibly trusting person then. When my employer told me there was some problems and I'd have to receive my last salary with the next one, I accepted. Last day of the job, when he asked me to sign the paper that declares I had nothing indebted to me by that company, I signed it. I was a moron. I was young. They never paid me, of course. Even though being stiff that way was a lump in my throat, I tried to gulp it down. I worked hard at my new job, trying to prove that I could do better than I did before. But another sneak attack from my ex-employers was the last drop. One day I arrived at the job. My new employer called me to his room. He explained that my ex-employer reached to him and told him that I was a lazy, a liar, worthless, and it wasn't worth the effort to have me as an employee because they were about to sue me, so I wouldn't be able to do any work with all the legal stuff. I was beet red. I apologized for being a nuisance and I said I'd clear my desk instantly. He laughed cheerfully and said, "You've been working for me for 2 weeks. You completed 2 high-quality websites and half of a desktop app. I'll cut my own throat before I fire you." Still, I was so shaken that he had to give me permission to leave early. It was Friday anyway. I went home and cried. Not because of sorrow, but rage. I couldn't touch them. I just couldn't. I couldn't? That's the day I fired up Google and typed "how to hack" for the first time in my life. The first response was a forum in my native language. I started reading and gosh, I had a lot to read. Coding and hacking are, even though they share the same expertise, vary so much when it comes to details. I confess, it was then impossible for me to think like them, but thankfully the forum crawled with helpful technical tutorials telling me hows and whys of every exploit I could use. As I said, I was young and a moron. Back then, I had my own MIDI admin workframe that I used in every website I made, and I just realized there was a crucial mistake I made in calls to create new records. Users, pages, news items, galleries, everything. I wasn't checking the authorization at all. It would nearing impossible for a hacker to use this because he wouldn't know or get exposed to the exact call, but I knew it. It was about 6 AM when I finished reading. I used public transportation to go to the other end of the city. I found an internet cafe where the young attendant didn't care about IDs and which didn't have any security cameras. I sat in a corner and started breaking every single website I made for them. There was one about pastry materials, a website consisting over 1,000 ingredients. In the main page, a random assortment from each ingredient type would be shown as a gallery. I replaced about 20 of them with images of human waste. Only 20 or so. A viewer who got used to it wouldn't realize the error until some time had passed. I made the chief physician, of a hotel page, the Angel of Death itself, with images and a special bio. People don't look into physician bio pages, so I was sure it wouldn't be found out for long. I made an announcement in ultra-nationalist Party A's website that their number one enemy would be giving a speech. In a local newspaper page, I made all old videos instead linked to the famous Boituma video where an anime girl spins a leek in her hand. Slowly, a few websites a day, I broke every single website I made for them, approximately 60 websites or so. The backlash from customers seems to have been furious in a domino effect. He lost his customers' trust and his references, which simply means everything for this kind of job. Once the proud owner of one of the best agents in his region now tries to work in a tiny office making a living, doing third-rate websites with his meager skill. Even though I never met him during this period, one of my friends was working under him until the last moment. I loved listening to his struggle to find out how I did it. They knew I did it, they just had no way of proving it, while losing more and more customers every day from my friend. I don't know if this suits the phrase nuclear, but at least the cold satisfaction I get whenever I walk past his tiny office these days may be considered nuclear. This next post is by Leading Road 8119. Bully tries to act like it was in school. Guess I will tell on you then. In secondary school, I was tormented by a specific bully. For years I was beaten up and publicly humiliated on a daily basis. The worst thing he did was beat me up so bad that I got a concussion and broken ribs when I was 14. He never faced consequences in school because his family was rich and he was pretty popular. For context, I live in a pretty small town in England, so everyone knows everyone, including the bully. He left the school when I was 17 and I didn't see him for about a year. Around this time, I got way more popular and started going to parties and making more friends. And annoyingly, he was friends with some of my friends and his GF was at my school, but I managed to avoid him mostly until I finished school. Unfortunately, I saw him a few months later. Me and my friends went to the pub to celebrate our exam results, and he was a complete a-hole to me. Started insulting me and mocking me to my friends, saying, "Why do you hang out with OP?" Bringing up a bunch of stuff from years ago, and at one point put me in a headlock and told me that my friends only hung out with me out of pity. I wasn't going to take it, but I also wasn't going to get into a punch-up, because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of getting me angry. And right at that moment, I overheard the perfect thing. He was bragging to his friends about the house party he was having, and saying about all the drugs he was going to take to the party, and said he had it all in his car. It wasn't just a bit of weed either, if I remember correctly. He said he had 13 bags of coke, about 30 pills of MDMA, and 7 or 8 grams of ketamine, and then I knew what I would do for my revenge on the guy. As he was leaving, I followed him to his car and took a picture of his number plate. Then as he was driving off, I walked off and called the police. I knew they needed something more than hearsay to stop the car, especially because I didn't want to be traced back to it. So I told the police I saw my bully snorting a white powder in the public toilets. This was a complete fabrication. And then get into the driver's side of the car. I then provided them with the license plate of the car and told them the direction they were heading in. I honestly didn't think they were going to stop him, or maybe they would ask him questions later and ruin his party. But the driving on drugs allegation, plus the fact he had been arrested for minor possession before, which I didn't know at the time, was enough for the police to take it seriously and stop and search his car, which they found all the drugs he was transporting to his party and he got arrested for it. The consequences of his arrest meant he got kicked out of his university place. His rich parents had enough of his behaviour, so kicked him out and cut him off from their funds. And a rumour I heard was that in turn for a lower sentence, my bully ratted out his supplier, which resulted in him getting stabbed multiple times, and as a consequence of that now, has to wear a colostomy bag, and that plus his criminal record means he is currently unemployed. This next post is by Ranthro607. Site manager neglected to take care of my property, so I cost the property management company over $500,000. Some background: I, 35M, own a 72 units apartment complex. When I bought it, it was in good shape and I spent several million getting all apartments renovated. The rent wasn't increased for any of the tenants, and I made sure that it never went up by more than $50 a year for lease renewals, baked into the leases. Shortly after all the renovations were completed, I started the search for a property management company and ultimately settled on one that seemed well aligned with wanting to put the tenants first. As we were doing the contracts, I had my real estate friend also look at them. Between him and my lawyer, they recommended having a clause added in there. The short of it is, if there are any legal actions brought up against me for the apartment complex due to neglect of the property management staff, the property management will be responsible for all those costs and any legal fees incurred. This wasn't added in secret, and the legal team from the property management company agreed and everything was finalised. They took over the management of the complex a month later. I was fairly hands-off and only visited the site every 3 to 4 months. Other than that, I'd have the monthly updates sent to me by the manager on site. A few months ago I found out that a couple of the apartments had been left in severe shambles after the tenants moved out, and the cleaning crew we had took care of it. I didn't find out until after the fact that it was not completely accurate, because one of the apartments apparently had a bad roach infestation in the storage closet outside the apartment. After the new tenants moved into that apartment, they brought up the issue to the site manager. In the monthly reporting, the site manager claimed that maintenance staff tried to address it with traps and bug bombs. I didn't think too much of it and left it at that. Next month, the same thing. And the third month after receiving the monthly report, I called the site manager stating there is a reoccurring issue and I wanted it taken care of professionally at that point. The month's rent was waived for the tenants in that agreement, and they were put up at a hotel for a week while the issue was to be addressed. Once they returned to their apartment is when the issue started. The site manager, either by mistake or by negligence, didn't communicate with the exterminators the extent or the location of the infestation. Instead of the storage closet, the apartment was fumigated, and after that, the roaches made their way into other apartments in the same building and the nearest building, and the problem got so much worse. The same option was given to all the tenants in that building, waiving the month's rent and putting them up in a hotel for a week while the issue was addressed. They all took that offer up, however one of the tenants decided to take legal action. While I wasn't happy about it, I understood where they were coming from, having their lives disrupted by something that should have been addressed properly to start. As we were midst negotiating with them during mediations, my lawyer reminded me of the clause with the property management company and suggested we give them what they want. That is where I started my nuclear revenge. I had the rest of the tenants from the 2 impacted buildings be suggested to anonymously that one of the tenants had filed a lawsuit for the damage and they should do the same by getting in on it. Through the mediation, I pretended to be outraged at the whole matter. The negotiation started at 3 months of free rent, but ultimately we all settled on 1 year of free rent for all those tenants. Overall, that came to 16 apartments with rent averaging from $1,700 monthly that the property management had to pay for due to negligence of the site manager, equaling to roughly $325,000 in just the lost rent they had to pay for. And the cherry on top, due to the breach in service for property maintenance, they also have to provide free services for up to 6 months, while I seek out a new property management company, costing them an additional $146,000, and still pay for the legal fees on top of that. This next post is by Drumhead, entitled Lady's Porsche Loses Tires. Okay, so this story took place back when I was in Florida in the early 90s. It does involve an act of vandalism that is connected to revenge. Hopefully it won't be removed, and hopefully it does count as nuclear revenge. Anyway, South Florida was devastated by Hurricane Andrew. My dad, as part of a local charity, was set up day after day at a local market seeking donations from shoppers to give to food banks. You have to understand, this storm left many people homeless and without power in some cases for 6+ months in Florida heat and humidity. My father was legally disabled from a serious car accident, he was hit by a drunk driver, in the early 80s and suffered from relentless hip and back problems. It never killed his heart or kindness to others, hence the charity work. One day he was about to pull into the disabled space of the local market to go buy a few items to donate to the hurricane charity. Right before he is about to pull in, this lady pulls into the space in this shiny red Porsche. My dad parks behind her and says, "Excuse me ma'am, I was about to pull in there." and also points to his disabled placard in the window. She says to him, "You don't look disabled," and proceeds to walk into the store. For anyone who has a relative that uses a disabled space, you know the frustration of this situation and the anger one feels. My dad, seemingly unfazed, waits until she goes into the store and then gets out and snips the valve stems on all 4 tires, flattening but not destroying all of them. He then pulls into another space not far away and just waits. About 15 minutes later, the lady comes out and is shrieking about her car being vandalized. My dad is far enough away so she can't see him, but he can hear everything. She calls the police. Big mistake. She files a report for vandalism, and the police give her a ticket for being parked in the disabled space with no placard, about $250 at the time. The cops leave and she calls a tow truck, and as the car is being loaded onto the truck, my dad pulls up and says to her, "You don't look disabled, but your car sure is," and then drives off. My dad could be a nice guy and pure savage when he needed to be. This next post is by Seneca13. Karma generates interest over time. In the 3rd grade, I was an awkward kid, had a mean drunk father, struggled to fit in and make friends, was bullied and shunned by other kids. One of my classmates, let's call him Derek, who regularly partook in bullying me, showed me kindness one day. Being deprived of kindness or attention so regularly, I was putty in his hands. He hanged out with me during recess when I was usually alone. We laughed and talked about girls we like. He even apologized for being an a-hole to me. The reason he was so nice to me was because I had bought a very popular, expensive Batman action figure to school with me to pass the time since I was alone mostly. I saved allowance and mowed lawns for 2 months to buy that toy. Everyone wanted one. By the end of the day, he asked me if he could lend the action figure, and like the naive, socially inept kid I was, I trusted him with it. The deal was to return it the following morning. I went home so happy, completely fooled, I never suspected a thing. The following day he completely ignored me. When I tried to talk to him, he acted like I was crazy. When I asked him to return the action figure, he simply said, "You never gave me any, Batman, maybe you imagined it." And when I persisted, he threatened to beat my A. When I complained to my teacher, I was told that it was my own fault for bringing toys to school. I was afraid they would involve my father, so I dropped it. I couldn't let my father know, or I would be called a P, and I would have my A beat and punished for the next 2 weeks. What's worse is Derek told all the girls that I confided to him about fancying that I lusted after them and then I wanked to them. Oh no. I was a social outcast before that, but at least I was tolerated. But after his smear campaign with the girls, I was a leper. People wouldn't even look me in the eyes, not even the teachers. Kids started throwing stones at me, sabotaged and vandalized my property. It was hell. I did nothing about it but cry. I was just a weak-willed kid after all that. But to this day, I wish I'd bit someone's ears off or something, anything in retaliation. After a while, the bullying died down, I focused on my studies and started getting good grades. Derek started talking to me again, but I ignored him completely. Sometimes he would repeat, "Why are you being such a baby? You didn't give me anything, you imagined it." By the end of the year, we moved houses and I transferred to another school not far away. Things were much better there. I finally had friends, and I was not as naive anymore, so I was not as easily targeted. But I was still mostly me, and still got picked on now and then. Over the years, I became somewhat of a delinquent, and in high school I got into regular fights. I may have been overcompensating for the lack of a spine I had in my younger years. I bartended in nightclubs, hotels, and cruiser lines in my early 20s. This helped me a lot to be more socially adept and to understand social dynamics and human nature. I finished trade school and qualified as an electrician, and later as a plumber. I know, water and electricity, but believe it or not, I thought it was ingenious at the time. I started my own business, developed a reputation for excellent workmanship in my local area, and did well for myself. When I was 29, I'm 36 now, I received a call at 2 in the morning for a flooding emergency at a local residence. When I got there, the place was a mess. Water was jetting out of a burst pipe and electrical equipment was shorted. It was highly dangerous. The living room floor was caved in due to a sinkhole. I was met by the wife, let's call her Jane, hysterical and beside herself. She somehow thought that she was responsible, which I found odd. I assured her that it couldn't possibly be her fault. He arrived not 5 minutes later. His demeanour was irate. He didn't greet or shake my hand when I offered. I recognised him immediately. Derek from all those years ago. He demanded to know why I have not begun fixing the issue yet. I was professional, told him what I'd told the wife in terms of costs, but I'd hidden the written quote in my vehicle. I told him who I was and acted happy to see him, assured him that he was in good hands. After a while of arguing with his wife, he seemed to calm down and joked around with me. I knew I had fooled him. We talked about our careers, kids, our school days. I gave him tips and fake recommendations. We got along great. His trust was pretty easy to gain. He must have thought of me as a complete sucker. I assured him that he was in good hands, and this would be fixed in no time. I was careful not to start any actual work on the property. Doing the smallest thing would make me responsible for all of it. Derek left after an hour or so and his wife stayed behind. I started my revenge. When I was doing my assessment, I noticed that most of the building did not comply with city regulation and did not adhere to the registered and approved plans. There were multiple safety hazards and all plumbing and electrical work were completed by unqualified and uncertified people in an attempt to save money. Also, the pipe in question had been leaking for a few weeks at least and getting worse by the day and finally causing disaster, which meant their water bill would be astronomical at the end of the month unless a qualified plumber endorses a rebate with the municipality. I called my contact at the city, let's call him Donovan, and notified him of all the regulatory violations, safety hazards, and non-city compliant installations on the property. I also told him of the possible water bill. He promised to be there the next day. I immediately started photographing and documenting. The following morning, my contact was there at 10. He had a field day. He informed Derek's wife of the calamity that was to come. They would be forced to tear down all the building additions, remove all the uncertified plumbing and wire installations, have the plans reapproved and start from scratch, which is an estimated loss of approximately $950,000. Derek was there in minutes. He was livid. He quickly threatened legal action, but Donovan simply told him that he had more than enough photograph evidence to have the property declared invalid within a week if Derek did not comply in writing. Donovan reminded Derek that he does this for a living and that the city has more legal resources to waste money on. I left Derek an invoice for my time just to smear salt in the wound and took my leave. Later he called me every name under the sun. I remained silent and he hung up. He went on a Facebook rant about me, which was a bad idea. All of the community stood up for me and it started a storytelling competition where all kinds of people revealed the stories of savoury things Derek did to them in the past. Apparently, Derek has always been an a-hole. He never changed. One day he called me and asked to meet. He sounded defeated and depressed, so I decided to meet to see what's up. I met him at a local busy convenience store. I know better than to take Derek the Weasel at face value, so I noticed quickly when he laid his phone screen down on the table. I knew he may be recording the conversation. He apologized for his behavior, which surprised me, and told me that this whole dilemma has all but bankrupted him. He told me he took out a loan for the building additions and cut corners to save money, that everyone does it. He showed me the water bill, which was nearly $80,000. A problem easily erased with a qualified plumber's signature and endorsement. I refused. He got irate again. Then he asked me, "Why did you do this to me? I know I was a D to you at when we were kids, but I don't deserve to have my and my wife's life ruined because of mistakes I made when I was a kid. What kind of person are you? You told me I was in good hands. I trusted you. You assured me you would help me, and then you stabbed me in the back. You quoted me only a few hundred and told me not to worry." I replied, "I said no such thing." Derek, "Stop lying. You told me that it would cost a few hundred, maybe less. I heard you say it. You promised to help me, gave me recommendations. Why are you doing this to me?" OP, "Derek, you must have imagined it." I looked him in the eye. He knew exactly why I said that. The same thing he told me almost 20 years ago. I repeated just to drive it home. OP, You're being a baby. I never quoted you for anything. You imagined it. He knew I was destroying him financially because of a Batman action figure he stole from me 20 years ago. I could see it in his eyes, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. His expression was a mixture of astonishment, disgust. I looked him dead in the eyes for a few seconds for effect, then got up and left. I slept like a baby that night, and had a goofy smile all week after. He tried calling a few times, but sent him a text stating that further harassment will be met with legal action. Derek, you know what your real name is, and what mine is. If in future you read this and realized how I screwed you over, remember how costly that little Batman action figure was to you after years of accumulated interest in karma. The look of despair on your face when you realized why you were ruined was delicious. I cackled maniacally on the drive home from that convenience store. It was time for you to pay the piper. And if you think this will help you, legally go ahead and try. It won't, so don't waste your time, or rather do. Waste as much time and money. I welcome being even more of a financial inconvenience to your life. F you, Derek. Yeah, that's right. F you, Derek. Anyway, that's going to be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories in r/NuclearRevenge. Let me know what you'd like to listen to next in the comment section below, and also hit that subscribe button because I post new Reddit content every single day. This was Reload Reacts. My name is Trey, and I will see you in the next video.